great event, rather lovely, great visits to Tir, great visits to Baalbek, and I took some pictures in Baalbek, which I also entered into the presentation because some of the items actually are correlated with the things I'm going to tell. So it's going to be on Hermes Trismegistus, a link to ancient alchemy, and then a link to modern string theory and modern end theory. And I want to start with a famous quote of Nikola Tesla. He stated that if you want to find out the secrets of the universe, you have to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibrations. Okay. So introduction. So in the past, in ancient times, science always went hand in hand with philosophy and with spirituality. This gave rise to man being more in balance with the body, mind, and spirit. And one of these key findings was Hermes Trismegistus as being a pillar of alchemy, Gnosticism, sciences, and it was an inspiration for a whole bunch of philosophers. But over time, science and spiritualism science became more materialistic and decoupled from philosophy or spiritualism. But nowadays, in the search for the theory of the all, or M theory, there is perhaps another possibility to link again philosophy and mysticism with aspects of science. So, who was Hermes Trismegistus? Was he a real person or was he a mythical person? Actually, it's a syncretic combination of the Greek god Hermes, the Egyptian god Thoth, this gentleman here, and the Canaanite Phoenician Enoch or Arnak. And therefore we have the epithet. Okay, thrice great. So Hermes also is symbolized by the caduceus, and it's not very clear, but this is a picture from Heliopolis in Baalbek of the winged key, which is a symbolism of Hermes. But some people believe that Hermes Trismegistus is actually a real person, actually a contemporary person of Abraham or Moses or even Paul. There are a lot of writings concerning Hermes. Clement of Alexandria stated that the Egyptians had 42 secret writings dealing with the training of Egyptian priests. Yeah, it's energy savings. Okay. The writings are known under what's called the term Hermetica, and there are two important writings: the Corpus Hermeticum, or Poemander, or the Exclesius, or the Perfect Sermons. Now, Hermes was very influential to a lot of scientists, including using Einstein, is here, Leonardo da Vinci, Kepler, and many others. There are some other writings called the Kybalion, which is more recent. Some of these authors of the Kybalion, can we try to, this is yeah. So there's another writing related to Hermes, the Kybalion. Some people, or some of the authors, believe that this was the teaching given to Abraham. It was published in 1908 by the Yogi Publication Society, but actually it's also related then to the Masonic Temple in Chicago. In this book, it talks about the 7 important Hermetic principles and 2 additional concepts. What are these? First one is mentalism, stating that all is mind. Everything what we see, everything is mind. Like these cups, this computer, this annoying beaver. First was conceptualized in the mind of a person. So everything was started as a concept in the mind. Same for the universe. Second principle is correspondence, as above, so below. So by studying astrology, the universe, you come to the same answers as if you were studying the nucleus of cells and the small particles. And there is a correspondence, as above, so below. Then the principles of vibration. Nothing sits still, nothing rests, everything moves. And everything has frequencies in motion. And this is for instance another picture I took in Heliopolis, Baalbek, and these are, who knows what this is? Cymatic figures, indeed. You find similar things also in the Rosslyn Chapel, in small Hagia Sophia, and so on and so forth. Another principle is polarity. Everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair and its opposite. And then the principle of rhythm. Everything flows, there is a rise and fall, there is continuation of activities, and the pendulum swings, that's good often, once to the left, once to the right, and it's important that you stay above the planes and let all the planes pass underneath you. Two effects, or two additional principles, cause and effect, so every cause has its effect, and the principle of gender. In everything there is a masculine, and in everything there is feminine. In order to have revolution, it's better to have transmutation. It's changing less interesting aspects of less developed things into more developed things. In fact, the concept of transmutation. And then there is an intrinsic truth in everything. And the key is to find the truth. Now, I'm talking about and giving a lot of information and on historical facts and some scientific findings. And I link that to a way of thinking, but this is, of course, my way of thinking. It's very important that you know this is my way of thinking. Perhaps you have a different way of thinking. You can take things which are interesting to you, other things which you don't interest, you can leave it as such. Another important text is the Emerald Tablet, or the Tabula Smaragdina. The oldest source is in an 18th century Arabic book, The Secret of Creation, by Jabir ibn Hayyan, or in Latin it's Geber. And actually the English saying it's gibberish is actually coming from that. Because some people say they don't understand what it was about. But it was also an inspiration for many scientists and philosophers. This is actually the trans. This is a. Yeah,
What about the good things on the laptop?
We can read it from the laptop, yeah?
Negative vibes.
Maybe you should restart the laptop.
But this is not specific.
Because it's not receiving the signal. No. I think we should just.
It's not a laptop, I think.
Well, perhaps you can put it on the other laptop. It was working fine. Okay, put on the other laptop. Slice it. Okay.
Is it gone?
No, it's not. Okay, so we should projector. It's negative vibes. Reset, restart.
Yeah. Not consider recruiting. It's the recording and the report. Yeah.
Now it seems. Good. This is the translation of Isaac Newton of the Emerald Tablet. And here again, you can find some of the similar things like that which is above is like that which is below. Or even the two elements. The sun is its father, the moon is its mother, and the wind has carried in its belly, and the earth is its nurse. So we'll be coming to those things again a little later on. So we have body, material, energy, spirit. So here you can find some of these elements inside.
Body, mind, and soul.
Sorry?
Body, mind, and soul.
Indeed. And body, mind, and soul will come to that more into detail. So we're getting started on Hermes, and then we're moving on to those things through the alchemical part. Then there's another gentleman who wrote a book, and now it's getting a little bit fuzzy, but you have to understand that sometimes in a lot of these mystical writings, there is a lot of rubbish as well, or some strange things. But you have to investigate everything, and then you have to decide which is rubbish and which is interesting. But sometimes for some people, this can be rubbish and that can be valuable, and for some, vice versa. Anyway, so this is Dr. Doreal, and he published a book called The Emerald Tablets of Thoth. And the Emerald Tablets of Thoth was an Atlantean. He mentioned that he had been given a task to go and retrieve 50,000-year-old tablets with old coin kept together from the Great Pyramid and return them to the Great Pyramid in Egypt. So it's very strange. Emerald tablets, 50,000 years of age, and so on. Now, Dr. Doreal founded in the past an organization called the Brotherhood of the White Temple, linked to the Great White Lodge with the headquarters in Shambhala. It's all very strange, and then you say, okay, where is Shambhala? Then you find some things which is even stranger. Right? Then you come to here it is. Shambhala is actually a region in Agartha. And Agartha is hollow earth. And it seems that in various cultures, like in the Egyptians, like in the Tibetans, they talk about hollow earth. And then if you look at, for instance, the North Pole, so there are two openings according to this theory. You have an opening in the North Pole, you have an opening in the South Pole. And then you find some of these images, it's not very clear with the light, but with a hole from satellites taking pictures. And this is actually the traffic of aeroplanes over the North Pole, but for some reason they are not allowed to fly here. But this, of course, can be that they have some magnetic disturbance flying over the North Pole for their GPS systems. Well, they put something else as well. That could be that there is an opening. But anyway, so Dr. Doreal wrote a book with an organization with the headquarters in Shambhala in the region of Agartha. So with these type of things, they read here very much, to be looked at in a very, 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 very critical way. Okay, but it's fun reading it. It's nice exploring. My sons like it a lot, reading about this, but they have to also be aware that it might be, or most probably, there's nothing hollow. Okay. Now we're moving into alchemy. So it's a period of the Hellenistic Egypt, post Alexander the Great. And it's actually a union of two interesting traditions. One is the practical and artisan Egyptian knowledge on metal working, so the chrysopeia, the making of gold, and then you have an old term for the making of silver. And then the theoretical speculations of the Greek philosophers about the nature of man. The Greeks refer, so where is alchemy coming from? The Greeks refer chemia to the art of the people of Egypt. And later on, the Arabs added the prefix al, giving it alchemia. Chem was also black soil, which they used, was actually stibnite, to convert stibnite into gold. But everybody knows there is a high amount of gold embedded in stibnite. And this is how they gave rise that they could transmute lead and tin or mercury into gold. but there is a scientific background behind that. Very important philosopher was Thales of Miletus, and he stated that all substances are modifications of a single primordial substance, so actually going to monism. And here, of course, it's very nicely presented by this snake here eating its own tail, stating hand to palm, one is the all. And this concept was already known by the Egyptians in the 14th century before Christ. So this is already a very old concept. Then Thales, he inspired a lot of other philosophers like Pythagoras, who expressed the manifestation of the four elements and the fifth element of the quintessence in a pentagram. The medieval alchemists called this fifth element ether, the quintessence. And then, of course, if you know about geometry, in the pentagram, you can find a lot of interesting equations like the golden cut and so on and so forth. I'll come back to the golden cut a little bit later, talking about Planck's length, because it's actually the same. Good. Then we had Pythagoras, and then Pythagoras, he used also these elements, but he also was very much into vibrations. And Pythagoras stated that all elements, all matter was vibrations, and every element and every planet had its own frequency. So he mentioned, Pythagoras mentioned that he could hear the songs of the spheres. He could hear the planets and he could hear the Earth. And then it links to the Schumann resonances, which are very extremely low frequencies. And for Earth, it's about 7.83 hertz. So that's the frequency of Mother Earth. Moving to Aristotle, he associated the four elements with the duality of male-female, active-passive, positive-negative, energy and matter. So you have, and it's also linked to the four areas, so north, west, south, and east. So water and air, water and earth is in the north. Air and fire is in the south. The sun is in east, and moon sits in the west. Now, Aristotle said that all matter, all particles, different particles, are just are different because it's a different mix of elements. It's a different mix of mercury, the wet and cold part, and a different amounts of sulfur, the hot and dry part. The ancient cultures defined the seven metals, linked them to the planets and the organs. Lead, the planet Saturn, iron, Mars, copper, Venus, Mercury, tin, Jupiter, silver, the moon, gold, the sun. These are the non-noble metals, and these are the noble metals. And they believe that one metal can be transmuted into another by changing the propositions and the purity of the philosophical mercury and the philosophical sulfur. An important other aspect is duality and polarity. So the male and active force can unite again with the female and passive force, and this forms the Salomon seal. So you have the res bina, both together. This is actually a picture I took from the supermoon in November 2016. So I was airborne flying to Vietnam, and there was a very strong sun shining on the moon. So the sun was gone. Everything turned blue, and the moon looked almost like a sun, a blue sun, and it was fantastic. It was great to see. Now, talking about this seal, I added here, this is the signature of Christopher Columbus. For the Cistercian priests, they used an X to represent this. So it was a triangle sitting like this, and a triangle like this. It was moving together, and this little thing here expressed the love between both. So when triangle on the top sets on triangle below and was joined again, you had this little signature on the left-hand side. So that's a symbol also from Cisterciensers and some old Templar cipher code that they used to express the unity between the male force and the female force, the active and passive. You find also this type of rune, or this cipher code, on the Kensington stone in the States. So this is a little bit of a hint that Christopher Columbus was not the first who discovered America.
It represents also the fire and the water. Fire and the water.
Yes.
The air and the,
exactly.
and the earth.
Exactly. Okay. So back now to practical things on alchemy. So as I mentioned, it was a merger of the craft traditions and a philosophical knowledge of the Greeks, which happened around 300 after Christ. And then a gentleman who was really into alchemy was the Greek alchemist Zosimos of Panopolis. He wrote many, many books, and very practical ones. So if you want to have a practical handbook on doing alchemy, you can look into his books and try to do some experiments. But he used, and that's the time when he started using very coded and symbolical languages. And also Zosimos considered him as the founder of alchemy. It was further developed very much so in the Arabic world. There's a whole collection of these books, also from this Jabir Hayyan, called Jabir Corpus. It was taken in the Middle Ages, also you can say, brought back to the West, and then from the 17th century it was very much developed further in the Western world. Most of the alchemical work from the 17th century onwards deals with the transmutation of metals by catalysts referred to as philosopher's stones. Now there are two varieties. There is a white stone which can transmute lower metals, which ones I mentioned, the five like tin and mercury into silver, and a red one to transmute lower metals into pure gold. Some people also worked on preparation of medicines. For instance, this gentleman here, Paracelsus. He's writing in very heavy sentences, and therefore you have also the name bombastic is coming from this gentleman. Bombastus from Hohenheim, known as Paracelsus, was a very bombastic person and also in his writings. Now, I'll tell a little bit about this. I already mentioned that they used stibnite. Stibnite contains lead and mercury oxide, and it's a little bit fatty. But there's a lot of gold inside as well. So, and then by using just plain chemistry, a metallic chemistry, they could use catalysts to retrieve the gold from this mix of stibnite. So they could transform, and it was just purification of the gold inside the stibnite. So there's some practical truth behind alchemy as well. So Paracelsus added another element to the philosophical salt, to the elements, namely philosophical salt. And now he has his tria prima. He has the combustible sulfur, being the soul, the fluid, changeable mercury, which is the spirit, and the solid, the material, the body, represented by the salt. And then the sickness and health of humans and the harmony of humans is all related to these elements. And he says, well, again, as above, so below, the body is a microcosmos inside a huge microcosmos in a macrocosmos. This is the golden chain of Homer and the tria prima. So you have chaos. Out of chaos, you have the celestial salt, celestial nitre. That splits up in these four elements, giving rise to earth and water to salt, water and air to mercury, and air and fire to salt. Keep in mind that Mercurius was a messenger between the gods and earth. Now, for me, for alchemy, sometimes people have a difficulty. What's a body? What is soul? And what is spirit? And it's actually easy explained by plants. if you take herbs, which you use in the kitchen, and you do a hydrodistillate, you make a distillation with water, you get the essential oils, which has a nice smell. If you then take the remaining parts of that plant and you ferment them, so it's changed, and you distill again, you have spirit alcohol. That's the spirit. Then you take all the remaining parts and you do the calcification. Then you have the matter. You dissolve the remaining matter, dissolve it in water, evaporate all the water, and you have your salt. So all the material is the body. That which is specifically, typically for that plant, is your soul, is your essential oils. And then the spirit, which is similar, you can obtain from different things, from plants, different plants. That's the spirit, that's the alcohol. So for me as a chemist, it's nice to clearly make a differentiation between body, soul, and spirit using this concept of alchemy in plants. Now this is something I added compared to last time. You can find also a lot of this information and Hermes in the Kabbalah, and more particularly in the Zephirot. Yeah. There are four important books: the Bahir, the Yetzirah, the Zohar, the Raziel, and they talk about 10 plus 11 Zephirot, with 22 personal parts, 3 mothers, 7 doubles, and 12 elements. And this is actually, you have this negative and a passive, but you have a middle thing supporting everything, and that's the mind plus the balance. So you have your Boas, the judgment and the mercy, Yakin, negative and negative and positive, but in balance.
Yes.
But what happens if something is out of balance and you create a tension? You can split these tensions, you can split it, and like your hands, you can build a tension between your hands. And if you have ions, if you have a salt ion with sodium and chloride sitting together, you separate them, there is a tension because they want to come together again. I will come to that a bit later. So here you will see embedded the 5 elements on the Zephirot: the ether, the earth, the ether, fire, air, water, east, up, down, and so on and so forth. Now, if you divide this balanced system into 2 times 5, 2 hands, 5 fingers, the 2 tablets of with each 5 commandments, and the 2 cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant, then you build a tension and you have energy being created. And they're doing experiments. You know what the Ark of the Covenant was? It was a what?
10 commandments.
It was inside. But why was it inside? It was perhaps not radioactive. If you read Exodus and you read there is actually a map and a plan on how to make an Ark of the Covenant. It's a huge capacity. They use cedar wood because it's good insulator, probably from Lebanon. And then you have an outer covering of gold, an inner covering of gold, so with an insulator in between and a cover. And then you have to wear wool and you carry it around, rubbing with the wool in a dry area. The whole thing is charged with static electricity. And if then some guy walks around with a sword, which is metal, he's get blown away. But already the Egyptians knew this. So actually the Ark of the Covenant, so you separate both elements and you create a tension here in between. I have some pictures of people doing experiments with the Ark of the Covenant that they rebuilt. Don't try this at home because it's quite dangerous. I also added that, and now we're coming to the next step. So I added here the fact of the Grail. Promised to Lara that I would enter the Grail here. So etymological spoken, in Old French, the Grail means a cup or a bowl. Latin gradalis or a Greek crater. It's actually a vessel to mix wine. Or the French sangreal can also be the royal blood. That's what people who like to read David Dan Brown. So is the Grail a cup? Is it Maria Magdalena? It's a spiritual status. Is it enlightenment? Or is it a philosopher's stone? It can actually be all of that. And Percival, the Comte de Grail, and Chrétien de Troyes, it's a young girl that brings a, that is not the, a precious decorated grail with a single offer, actually Mathaf. Leonardo da Vinci was a Templar, and in his Last Supper is supposedly there is a woman sitting next to Jesus. It's like here. And they say this is the Grail because there is no cup. But Leonardo da Vinci clearly depicts a cup. Clearly depicts a cup. Who knows where the cup is?
Vatican.
Yes, that's
yeah, it's like a cup.
correct. And also in Dan Brown, but there is a cup. And he is referring to a specific gentleman and the apocryphs. Now it's unfortunately, can we turn off the light?
Judah.
There is a grail. Perhaps it's not clear from that side, but look what look what's here. If you want, you can come have a look closer. Perhaps I can blow this up. Just a second. You see the cup? Here, the nice thing is there is a replica made. Yes, it's on top of Bartholomeus' head. It's on top of Bartholomeus' head. In the replica, so they made a replica of that. If you combine both, take a picture, look at the picture of both, it's not there. They forgot it. But this is the cup, and he's Leonardo is referring to Leonardo is referring to Bartholomeus and to the apocryphs, verse 4, 5, 6. Eva, woman, is as the moon and is standing in the west. Adam, man, is the sun and stands in the east. And then I invite you to read more of Bartholomeus because there is some interesting information there. But there is indeed Leonardo really had a Grail presented or a cup presented in his painting. In Notre Dame des Chartres, beautiful stained windows. You have a Madonna with child, the wedding at Cana, Jesus with Maria, and Jesus says, "Wife, what do you want from me?" And both carry closed books. And Jesus asks to pour water into vessels, which he changes into wine, being his blood. Blood of Jesus, same as blood of Osiris. Blood of Osiris is life, energy. In Chartres as well, you have the life of Maria Magdalena, the escape of Maria Magdalena with Saint Maxime to the southern of France. Jesus welcomes Maria Magdalena in heaven, and she has a child with her. So he welcomes both. So there are three Holy Marys from the Camargue: mother, wife, and daughter. Maria Tamar of Jesus. You have the Gospels of Maria Magdalena and the Pisca Sophia, where you can read more and find more out to see what's true, what's not true. Further to be done. In the Kabbalah, as I mentioned, you have the 10 plus 1 Sefirot. It's the different attributes, emanations used by God to create the universe. Maria Magdalena symbolizes the Grail, the chalice. Jesus the Christos, he symbolizes the active force. So what actually, and this is my personal view, what is a Grail? It is a cup or an organism that can contain and house energy, a life spark. Right? So the part of the covenant being charged with electricity, you have matter charged with electricity. We have life or body, where you have a bioorganism which is capable of housing energy and a spark. So every body is a brain.
Skeleton.
Sorry?
The skeleton.
Skeleton, not skeleton, perhaps as such, can't house energy. It's the whole thing. It's a vessel. Yeah, it's a vessel. So love gives union of both life and the spark and knowledge, that which is present in each of us in a close challenge with the God. So this is the challenge, this is the spark, and this is the God. Okay. Talking about the red wine. So what here is blood, is wine, but also if you take water in a cup, gold cup, and you send sunlight into it, it turns red. So actually, the energy, the blood of Osiris is energy, is sunlight, is energy. The Ark of the Covenant, as I mentioned, Ark of the Covenant is matter, which also houses energy. And here you see experiments done with a reconstructed Ark of the Covenant. So they charge it with static electricity, and you get very high energy between both cherubims. In this case, they used eagles. The whole thing started melting, and it's very dangerous. You can have fireballs flying out. So Aaron, brother of Moses, was struck down due to heavy charged energy. And now they're doing also experiments, and this was already known by the Egyptians. And this is an Anubis ark. And these Anubis boxes were used to hold secrets, and was the same system. Also static electricity that can strike you down if you're getting too close. Also in the Bible it said that between these two cherubims, God will be talking. And now they're doing experiments with this type of helmets, making electromagnetic fields, and if they do experiments, it seems that you have an impression that there's somebody with you in the room. Very strange. In a little while, you can actually go and buy these type of helmets, and you can do some experiments if you like. Then, now about a little bit of artificial intelligence, robots and quantum computers. If a biological system, a biological vessel, which is capable of holding an energy and a spark, is considered as human and to have a soul. The question is, if you combine quantum computers, because our brain is a quantum computer, with robotics, which can hold an energy and a spark, is that having a soul or not? That's something for you to think about, but that's a question I ask myself once in a while. And this is actually giving rise to the concept of transhumanism. There is a whole debate going on transhumanism. So what if you can have ideas, brain, thoughts, feelings downloaded in hardware? Is that still a human or is it not? By the mid-18th century, alchemy became a relic. They were just studying matter as such, the despiritualized world, and we get, it's called then the Enlightenment, but we lost a little bit the philosophy and the mysticism from the science, so it was completely separated off. It was a hard science, and the other people, they were philosophers, but there was not much there. And then it started changing because people were seeing again some of these basic principles, like table salt. Consists of a positive ion, sodium, negative chloride atom. Atom consists of a positive charge, nucleus, around which negative electrons fly, and look at quantum physics. And nowadays, what they predicted, transmutation, in 1890, Seaborg produced gold from bismuth by removing some neutrons, some of the particles, some of these sulfur, what Aristotle called, and protons, and transmuted to stable gold. So now, with modern techniques, you can do what the alchemists were saying that they could do. So from bismuth, you can actually make gold. This is actually a microcosmos, so you have 77 times to the minus 11. 6 neutrons, gray, sitting together with 6 protons, red, around which flies in orbits your electrons. And then on the macro scale, so this was looking into microcosmos, looking into atoms, and it's going deeper and deeper. On a micro scale, Einstein was looking at universe, and he came up with the equation E equals mass speed of light squared. And actually state that energy and matter are the same. And the Egyptians already had a beautiful saying. The Egyptians said, matter is condensed or frozen light. Great insight. Huh? So they already had great insights. The relation energy and matter can also be linked to order and chaos, or disorder, via the thermodynamical concept of entropy. And I'll come to that later, when we're going into this thing here, the quantum physics, in combination, moving towards the M theory. So theory of relativity, together with the quantum physics, merging to become a theory of one, a theory of all. These are the gentlemen who were the first ones to come up with this idea that the prima materia, so the basic particles, were actually vibrating strings. So everything is built up of vibrating strings. And these strings, string theory covers and unites four basic forces. Strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, electromagnetic force, and the gravitational force, which works over long distances. This is a string, and depending on the amplitude and the wavelength, the amount of nodes, and so on and so forth, then you have different energy, giving rise to different types of matter. So matter is the manifestation of standing waves on tiny strings, and the vibrational mode gives rise to all these different particles. Strings can be open or closed. A closed string is probably a graviton, so it can move in different planes. And scientists assume that the size of the string would be the same as a Planck's length, which is very tiny. It's 1.62 minus 10 to the 35. Times 10 minus 10 to the minus 35. And you see here again 1.62. Remember the golden cut? The same thing. Same thing. Now, how tiny is this? Just to give you an idea on how tiny this is. If we take our atom that we looked at earlier and we magnify it many times to the size as our Milky Way galaxy, 10 times to have this. If we magnify a string the same way, same magnifying glass, we have less than 1 millimeter. Okay, so this is how tiny a string is. So the Planck's length is a minimal meaningful length. There is no such thing as a zero length, because if you have then some of the mathematical equations and you fill in zero, you get infinity, which is of course God. But normally it's the lowest single is the smallest single length. So as I mentioned, the Planck's length almost equals the golden ratio multiplied by this factor, which you can find everywhere. Now the string theory requires 9 space dimensions and 1 time dimension. And each dimension represents a degree of freedom. We live and perceive everything in a 3-dimensional space, right? 3-dimensional space with 1 time dimension. Compared to the 10 Sephiroth, here you have 9 plus 1, 10, same as the 10 Sephiroth from the Kabbalah. But what do we do with all these extra dimensions? We have few theories. So they have proposed to curl up the extra space dimensions into tiny space of their own, to something like the Planck's length. And so we could be a cosmos of our own. This is called Kaluza-Klein contact quantification. Another possibility is to make extra dimensions really big, but then constrain all the matter and gravity in a 3-dimensional subspace. And then these theories give also rise to the concept of parallel universes and multiverses, where it's getting very strange, where a black hole in one is a sun in the other. I'll come to that later. Now, the string theory requires supersymmetry. The physicists have found a large number of particles which can be, again, following Hermes, broken down in bosons, which are carriers of force, active force, or fermions, which are particles, a bit more solid, so that's a bit more matter. A boson, for instance, a photon for light, or a gluon. This is what keeps the quarks together. A fermion, for instance, 3 strings with a knot forms a quark. The bosons are, as I mentioned, a male force interacting. Fermions are a female version body. This is, who knows what this is? Sorry?
Should be a boson.
That's not a boson. That's a boson. But which boson? Sorry?
The main.
Yeah, this is, it looks like a cross, but this is the shape, this is the calculated shape of a photon, and this is the indirect measured shape of a photon. That looks like a temporal cross, but this is like, a photon has this shape.
How about things can be?
Sorry?
Is it a microscope or?
No, it's indirect measurements, but they also did the calculation, what is the shape of a photon, because they have to have this knowledge also for your quantum computers. And so they did the calculation, but the indirect measurement, so this is the calculated shape, this is the measured shape. But the cross, equidistant cross, that is the one I found also in Baalbek, in Heliopolis, is much older than the cross of Jesus. The Egyptians used it, it was used everywhere. But it seems the cross, this type of shape, this cross is light. As a photon, it's light.
It only exists for a brief moment of time, right? Because
it can go on forever. It can go on with a photon, and it's a particle and it's energy. There's duality there. So over time, now the problem arises again. Over time, there were 5 different string theories developed. And instead of having one theory of all, they have 5 theories of all. But then they figured out that actually these 5 different string theories are just mirror images of the same thing. Yeah, you can look at them from different angles, looking from the topological duality, how spaces are related, or whether they are strong or weak. It's easy to join strings or to pull strings apart. But then the combination, the fact that they found that it was just mirror images of the same thing, gave rise to the M theory. Okay, so that's a combination of these 5 different string theories. So it was proposed by Edward Witten in 1995, and what he came up with, instead of having everything being built of tiny strings, he added another shape being membranes or the brain theory. And a brain can have multiple dimensions. And it was allowed to explain a lot of things they didn't know. So brains can contain electrical charges and have a tension related to how resistant they are for interactions with others. Brains can have 0 to 9 space dimensions. Strings are not the only, being that not the only fundamental objects. And then strings can attach to these brains 1 or more brains. For instance, here you see attached to the same brain, attached to both. As I mentioned, you have also circular strings. A circular string is probably a graviton, so a graviton can move from one brain or from one dimension to another. And that's now what they're doing, trying to do experiments in CERN. So they want to do experiments where they can see something taking off into another dimension to prove the existence of a graviton. And if that's, because the gravity force is a strong force, but we don't experience it as such. So they suppose that there is a vector sticking outside in another dimension, which is much stronger, and that is why we only see it as as a weak force. That's what I already explained. So the gravitons are the quanta of gravitational waves, and in 2016 was the first time with the advanced laser interferometer that they could detect a gravitational wave over long distance. These gravitational waves were already predicted by Einstein. Was never able to be proved. But now, in 2016, they have proven the existence of a gravitational wave. So we already discussed Hermes, the duality of and polarity. Okay. Now, talk about extremes. As I said, there is no such thing as absolutes, but perhaps that's also not true. If you look at the Kelvin scale of temperature, there is an absolute zero temperature at minus 273.15 degrees. At that point, everything freezes. So there is no vibration and nothing. What happens microseconds of the Big Bang. And in this case, quarks and gluons are not linked together anymore in what's called hadrons, but then they are behaving as free particles, and everything is back again to the same thing, and there is nothing can be identified anymore. And in 2010, the scientists have created a quark gluon plasma. And the temperature was reached of about 4 trillion degrees C. I think that's very hot. And of course, I have to say, superstring theory has been debated by a lot. Other people have come up with other type of theories, like the F theory of the loop quantum gravity theory. More studies being done looking at the sky, looking at the universe. More studies being done using CERN to look into atoms. But one of the merits that M theory can do is explain black holes. I'll try to explain it here. So black holes are formed when stars die, and their massive amounts of matter collapse inward. And even light at a certain stage becomes entrapped, and this point is called, no return, is called the event horizon. And the entropy, so the degree of order, or chaos, of a black hole is proportional to the surface of the black hole. Now, a black hole does emit something, and emits radiation called Hawking radiation. So black holes heat up, losing energy and thus mass more quickly, and eventually evaporate down to the size of a Planck's length. And so it absorbs things, it sends out salts, it sends out radiation, and it's shrinking, condensing to a Planck's length. And then what? So now the theory is, at that stage, a black hole would emit a final burst of radiation, boom, and it's gone. But this results in the so-called black hole information paradox. Information is order. Order is energy. So quantum mechanics do not allow for information to be lost. Information is related to the thermodynamic concept of order. And if information is lost, then order is lost, meaning that entropy or disorder increases. But the M theory provides a solution to the black hole paradox. But for a specific, I'm not going to go into details on that. And these gentlemen here came up with a solution by constructing 1 brane and a 5 brane, and by this, they actually could prove the whole paradox, the Hawking's paradox and the paradox of the black holes. It's quite complicated. If you're very good in mathematics, you can read that and try to understand it. But at least the M theory is able to solve that. So we can't need to. Yeah, and that's also in the multiverse concept. Information that enters into a black hole is passed from this into another universe. Now a bit, we're getting to the end, about body, soul, and spirit. This is a little bit my view, listening and reading about all of this. And if you say it's rubbish, you have every right to do so. But for me personally, it makes good sense. So an individual is made of matter, bones, organs, muscles, the passive force, and the energy, the active force, electromagnetic fields, electric pulses, moving ions. We pump blood around with ions, so we have electric field. Our biggest electromagnetic field is around our heart. Not many people know it, but the heart has 40,000 cells similar to our brain. We have a brain in our heart. This is also quite recent knowledge. It's love that connects and gives life to both. Cells come together. Cells come together, multiply, and hold the energy, the life force. Building blocks become organized, so the entropy and chaos decreases, which requires energy. If you decrease entropy, requires energy. The fetus grows, and at a given moment, and that's very strange, the heart starts to beat from its own, and blood is starting to pump around. So cells grow, and at some they don't understand why, but at a certain moment, the heart starts to beat. It's the largest electromagnetic field in the body. When a child is born, it breathes and starts its autonomous life. So who we are, our essence, our soul, is determined by two things. One side, by the matter containing DNA, which we receive, and also DNA contains memories by methylation. So if a few generations ago there was a severe trauma, that trauma is passed through the DNA to several generations further. So we have in our DNA, we receive information and history through matter. Okay, so this is here the apprentice pillar. They say it's also symbolizing the DNA format in local chat. So our body, the Grail, holds the energy, which is also coded memory or information. I'll come to that later. The life force has always been there, and it's like matter. So we are a vessel, a Grail, where the energy sits in. And this energy, in addition with interactions,
I think it's your chat.
Events, events, conscious or subconscious, determines and shapes who we are, our essence, our soul. Now, very important, our brains are actually quantum computers with intelligence and energy that follows the laws of the universe. And the consciousness in our body comes from quantum vibrations in the microtubuli. There are some references to this presentation. So microtubuli are protein polymers in our brain neurons, which regulate neurological and synaptic functions and links the brain processes to self-organizing processes on a very fine scale of the quantum structure of reality. Now, if the blood stops flowing, these microtubuli lose their quantum state and the person is out. When they resuscitate them, blood starts streaming, and then that's what's called the person that experienced a near-to-death experience. Now, these researchers mentioned, so what if the microtubuli don't exist anymore? They are believed that then actually this same information, and remember with the black holes, information cannot be lost, and that this information keeps existing, keeps continuing further. So if we are born, we get information in our matter, and we build our matter, our vessel. We have perhaps information coming in as energy in our vessel, in our grail, and it's both information and the way how we live builds our soul, builds our essence, like in the plants, the essential oils. It's who we are and what we do and who we become.
So when the body dies, the soul remains.
If the body dies,
Soul remains.
this quantum in energy, this quantum energy in it goes back to the universe. But this is my but this is my theory. But there is some science that I can use to see my theory. That's my theory. So if you have different, fine. But for me, I'm feeling more harmonious with this theory, and I like it. Yeah. So. So the string theory, M theory also provide models for the Big Bang, but also it can explain the Big Crunch. And what's the Big Crunch? So Big Bang, everything keeps going. At a certain moment, everything moves back again, to a tiny thing, and the thing blows up again in the Big Bang. That's a big bounce, which is also described a little bit in Hinduism or in the Hermetic principle of rhythm. So conclusions, in the past, mysticism, spirituality moved away from science. Science became hard science, evidence. We're trying to kill every mystical explanation and so on and so forth. But there's more between heaven and earth, and now with modern science, little by little, it seems that we can prove some of these things, and hopefully that's a way to unify again human spiritual aspects with science and matter in our body, making hopefully a better balanced human being again. And this being said, is the last few quotes from Tesla, which I really like. I think he has very good insights. There are some references, so I'm very happy to share the presentation. So I know it went a little bit quick, and with the screen going off and on, it was not so easy to keep my story going, but you can read further.